ever since 1600, the beginning of the Baroque period, I'd say the circle of fifths has been embedded in our music. So,
Have they had the circle of fifths since that time?
well, once music became tonal, the structure was based on the fifth, whether they liked it or not. So yeah, it was there since
Somebody had to write it out and say, hey, look at how this all works.
they didn't know it,
Right.
but it was in the
Sure.
actual harmonic, and they kept doing. You listen to Vivaldi, you hear. You'd hear this. So they knew it sounded good, and it actually came from the acoustics that nature gave us for tonality, but they didn't know that for a long time. He mentions a bunch of songs that use progression. And he says, and countless other doo-wop, R&B, pop, and rock hits that have surfaced in the 1950s and 60s. So I said this has come about since the 50s, and I wanted to explain to you how it came about. 1-4-5 those are the fundamental triads. So you'd use that in blues, and when rock came around in the 50s, the rock musicians were self-taught, so they tended to use 3 chords. You hear early rock songs, Rock Around the Clock or something like that. It's only got the 3 chords, 1-4-5. When the doo-wop groups came along, the way that you made a doo-wop song, you have 4 or 5 singers standing on the street corner. So they would start singing, and then another one would harmonize, another would harmonize. But here's what happened there. This is where it came from. The bass singer, let's say we're in the key of C. So for your tonic chord, you're there. For your subdominant, you're there. And for your dominant, you're there. But that's a big leap there. So what they did was they put passing notes. Like that. But because they picked a rhythm, boom, 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 they stayed long enough on that A here, then when the other singers harmonized it, it became harmonized with the submedian. So they kind of invented the 1-6-4-5 by creating this bass line. And then you could have a passing. That's the 1-6. Yeah. And countless other songs. Yeah. But it's interesting the way it came about was just trying to get from that note to that note and then put some notes in between so it's stepwise. And they just stopped on that submedian along the way, and then that created that particular change there. But that was the 1950s. So if it's embedded in our DNA, what he means is our kind of, as far as back as we can remember, we've heard this progression.
Social DNA or something like that.
Maybe that's what he means by collective.
Could be. Then he says, before a couple of fellows from Liverpool came along and knocked down the fences, hemming in pop music's structural vocabulary. Of course, he means the Beatles, who experimented harmonically with all kinds of things, so that suddenly the 3 chords and the 4 chord songs became very amateurish. Then he says even the Beatles weren't immune to its Ringo Starr's Octopus's Gardens. Yeah, that's 1-6-4-5. So that's the same progression. And then he says it happens. I don't know. I can't find it in American Pie. He says in the chorus to American Pie. That's 1-4-1-5. I don't get where he gets it in the refrain there. Now, here, Wilson surely knows how easy it is to apply the simplest of melodies over that surefire progression. I think he's got it backwards. I don't think it's the progression that made the hit catchy at all. I think you could come up with a dull, unmemorable tune with 1, 6, 4, 5. I think it's the other way around. In fact, I think it's a combination of rhythm and melody that would have made it memorable. Rhythmically, if you have some syncopation tends to be very catchy. And the word Friday, we usually don't say Friday, we say Friday. So what rhythm would that be if you said it? Friday. Not te. Because we don't say Friday. Friday.
One time.
One time, yeah. So if you remember from when we did our count clap, this one always threw us off because that's the Scottish snap. We'd be going 1, 2, 1 time, 2, 1 time, 2. So that's not all that common, but the word Friday fits that rhythm. So just singing Friday would set up a kind of a syncopation. Okay? So I think what he misses here is he's pinning all the catchiness on the harmonic progression. And just because there are a lot of songs that use that progression, I don't think it's the progression that, I mean, I do think you could have added to that. It's not a bad thing to have a harmonic progression. But I don't think you can have it both ways. In the 4th paragraph, he says that the songwriter was savvy for using these 4 chords. But then the Beatles made those 4 chords the opposite. In other words, if you were an amateur, you were using 4 chords. If you're a professional, you used clever chord changes. So how is it savvy to use something simple? Anyway, I think he's kind of simplifying everything in this article.